Doug, come in afterwards, I will try and, Kathy and I can kind of try and chat with them and just give them a heads up that the format's a little bit different, so that they, don't come on screen in their bathrobe and, blame us forever and are traumatized. So we'll get started, but I will, with all of that said, I will turn it over to you.
This is pretty informal, and it's a new experience for us, but we felt like that this is the 40th anniversary of Wildflower Symposium, and we'd be remiss if we didn't, no matter how many people attended, we felt like we'd be remiss if we didn't somehow celebrate that. So it's 40 years of Wildflower Symposium, and Don, you may remember that next year is 50 years from the date that the Wintergreen was purchased. So it's a celebratory date. I'm so glad that we can do this, because we were all afraid of of not being able to communicate, and how are we going to do these pieces. But at any rate, it's gone pretty well. Kathy deserves a lot of praise for how she put this together. Liz as well, and I'm just happy to follow along and be engaged. I really enjoyed being out in the field. I don't get to do as much of that anymore, but Kathy did the video of me out in the field, and I really sometimes am saddened because I don't get enough time out in the field teaching. So that was, any chance I get to get out in the field, I'm overjoyed. So anyway, welcome. It's really great to have all of you. Don, this is Old Home Week, seeing you there. I don't know how many people know Don Faulkner, but Don is the visionary who envisioned Wintergreen in the first place 50 years ago. So it's a real privilege to have him sitting there with Mary in the background and witnessing this. And Don, of course, had a huge impact on us doing the book in 2016. So it's great. So Liz, with that, let's get to questions. And
okay.
Here.
So, and we had, since all of you are, we have some familiar faces here. We had over 50 attendees, which is pretty fun to see. So it was kind of I meant to say that in the beginning, and to welcome all 50 of those people. We are recording this so that people, hopefully, if we can pull it off, we will have this online for later. And so the first question we had is, do you recommend leaving the native plants such as Joe Pyeweed and coneflower as they are through winter, or cutting back? And then on the heels of that, looking at what about the leaves in your yard, and that they had read that insects thrive when those are left and more birds are attracted.
This is a botany question, so it's pretty easy for me. And the best example I can give you, if you want to distribute seeds, go ahead and cut those plants back after first frost. I don't know how many of you have paid attention this year, but the roadsides at Wintergreen right now are stunning coming up the mountain. They are absolutely stunning. The wave after wave of different species of goldenrods, wave after wave of species of asters, all kinds of different asters, any number of plants. It's even better. One of the things we wanted to do is replicate the Blue Ridge Parkway to some degree, but Blue Ridge Parkway can't touch what we're seeing at Wintergreen. And the reason for saying that is that what the Nature Foundation has done over the years is encourage the Property Owner Association not to mow these road banks until after frost. And when you mow them before frost, you don't get the seed distribution. If you wait till after frost, most of the seeds and also the seeds on the species you mentioned are mature, and you're distributing seeds. So the beauty of Wintergreen Drive coming up the mountain right now is a direct result of cutting things off after frost. Now, regarding leaves and so forth, I think the biggest deterrent at Wintergreen of having leaves up against your house, and we're guilty of that too sometimes, is fire. You probably should rake the leaves away from your foundation because of carpenter ants and potential fire, maybe. Although fire at Wintergreen is not like the Midwest or like the West. We're not as fire prone as they are. But sure, it would probably increase insect diversity. And anytime you feel like you have to broom sweep your lot or your lawn or wherever you are, that lowers diversity instead of raising it. So it's a balance that you have to figure that out.
Okay, we're going to completely switch gears now. We have questions from here to all the way to here.
A few years ago, and I'm sure he's in a retirement home by now, but Mitchell Bird from William & Mary was on our science advisory committee, and he's the one most responsible for the return of bald eagles in the East. And there are two species of eagles we could see at Wintergreen. One's a bald eagle, one's a golden eagle. Bald eagles are usually associated with water. Bald eagles you'll find them in the sea, along the sea coast. Alaska is famous for it. But you also have them here. For some reason, we found, we cameraed an immature bald eagle on Devil's Knob last year, but it's becoming quite common to see bald eagles along the Ty and Piney River now, or in the Ty River Valley, one that's nesting in there. So bald eagles are around. They're often associated with the rivers that are flowing through the county, not always. And golden eagles we see in migration. Golden eagles are a bird of high places and open areas. Colorado's full of them. And you occasionally see one here in migration. But the bald eagle is actually becoming quite common in Nelson County.
Yeah, we've seen them on canoe trips, on the different intern canoe trips I know that we have taken. And on the heels of that, one question that we got was that their general impression was that the general wildlife population was increasing at Wintergreen. And is that impression, okay, so after you finish laughing, is that general impression correct? And if so, what is being done or should be done, if anything, and how do we as the foundation play into that?
Yeah. I can tell you that
this is like stump the director.
We're definitely seeing more wildlife, especially the bear that came inside Trillium House twice.
Yeah. As we tell that story in the very beginning, and now we
then the problem got twice as bad because he ate Josh's lunch. We are seeing there are two things going on. We're seeing we've been seeing a lot of deer at Wintergreen because the predators are not here. And before we had a developed community, hunting was allowed in this area, and man was the primary predator for deer. Man and, well, black bear is a predator for the fawns. But I think that two things. Hunting is not possible except for carefully managed euthanizing of some of the high deer numbers by the police department in the developed area. But in the last couple of months with COVID, I've had big numbers of increased sightings of wildlife, bear and bobcats, deer, other animals. And I think what's going on is that right now we have literally hundreds of people walking our hiking trails. The resort's social guests are 75 to 100% some weekends. And you've got, I would guess today, I was out on the trails today. I'm guessing today there are over 100 people hiking on our hiking trails.
Wow.
Could be wrong, could be 200. But I just went to the plunge and back, and there were 20 people I encountered there. I can only imagine what the falls are like. I can only imagine what Paul's Creek is like. Every one of our trails are just beat down slick. And when you have this many people out in the woods, social distancing and walking, they are intercepting all kinds of wildlife patterns. And I think that's one of the reasons that you are seeing more wildlife in the last couple of months, because in their avoidance of people, they're showing up in places that we haven't seen them before. And that's my best guess as to what's going on. Now, in terms of how we are dealing with wildlife in general, for the last 15 years, we have done 4 deer counts per year, and Josh handles these beautifully. We probably have, and I'm going to brag just a little bit, we probably have the best whitetail deer management program in the state. This was heralded at a wildlife conference several years ago as a really good one. And we have calls from Massanutten and going, how are you dealing with this? How do you do this? We want to replicate it. So that's one piece that's done. And Josh does 4 counts a year. He sends a report in to the Property Owners Association, and he makes recommendations as to how many deer we should get rid of. And that has worked extremely well. We have all the data. Now with bear, and these are the 2 that probably evoke the most interest with people. With bear, it's a little tougher. Usually, years ago, we always said a bear per square mile, which is 600 and some odd acres. But there are more now than that, and it's happening all over the state. And some of that is probably due to lack of hunting pressure with more development. And we do several things here. There's something called chase season before the bear season comes in, and we bring in some hunting dogs occasionally and chase the bear, trying to put the fear back in them. And then in some of the surrounding areas in the wilderness section of Crawford's Knob, we allow limited bear hunting and deer associated entirely with management pieces. And Josh keeps count of all that, and he monitors all that. So wildlife is, and this is the wonderful part of it, is we're sitting in the middle, and I think Don probably always envisioned this. We're sitting in the middle of wildness still. And thank God for that, that we have preserved all this open space where we can see wildlife. But it also gives us a responsibility of some level of management of it. Wow, that was a long answer. That'll teach people to ask questions.
We would expect nothing less from you.
Oh,
All right. So I'm gonna keep going, guys, but you feel free to raise your hand if you have questions. Definitely. Kathy and I are here to, as kind of cheerleaders and referees. So we're watching our screen and scrolling to make sure that we get everybody's, questions answered. So don't hesitate. Yes, Miss Terry.
This is not a question, but a comment. Both yesterday and today, I was delighted to see out my window an eastern bluebird here on the mountain.
Oh,
So pretty.
that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool. Well, I don't have any. That would have been really cool if I could have followed that up with a birding question. That would be amazing. I don't have a birding question, but that would be really cool.
I hope that, Terry, that's a result of all of the bluebird houses that we installed on the golf courses some years ago.
Could be.
That would be.
But what a pretty sight.
Is it Paul Davis that? No, Paul Davis that does it. Paul, we should let him know because he's still doing it. I ran into him down in the valley on Stony Creek right before the tournament. So he's still actively putting them out and monitoring and checking. So we should let him know. That would be really cool. And so, one question that we had is, should native plants be mulched over in the winter? And if so, what medium do you recommend for those?
You know, it depends, I think, on where you are. I wouldn't recommend that kind of special treatment on the mountain here. You can if you want to, but
I think this person is in the
plants
valley.
are, excuse me?
I think this person is at a lower elevation, like in the valley.
I never worry about native plants getting killed by cold weather in the wintertime. Okay. You know, the ecology of these species, these mountain species and the valley species, is that they survive this. The only reason that I've ever seen a native plant really frozen out. Now, if you bring non-native deciduous azaleas to the top of the mountain, they'll die every year if you don't do that. But with the native things, I don't see that. The only thing I see that could be detrimental to them is if they're in a very dry spot. And I'm assuming that these are planted plants, and I'm assuming that they may or may not be native. But if they're species that are misplanted, a species that likes to be near a gutter spout is planted in a dry place, they may be more susceptible to freezing. I don't know, but you certainly can mulch them. I wouldn't worry too much about it.
So on the heels of that,
might keep them from seeding, from self-seeding.
Oh. So on the heels of that is a question that we got from someone different. What do we see in the health of native plants versus invasive plants?
Now, let's see, is that a question? Ask the question again, please.
They wrote in what do we see in the health of native plants versus invasive plants? They also ended their paragraph by admitting that they had had a couple of glasses of wine. So it may be something around that item. But I think they're asking why, basically, I think they're asking us, why do we push natives? Why do we kind of focus on, we always tout planting natives versus an invasive. And so I think that's the direction that they're going.
Well, I'm not sure why anybody would purposely plant an invasive plant here if they knew it was invasive. So I'm going to assume that the question might be, what is the relationship we have between natives and invasives? And also the question could be, what's the difference between a native invasive plant and a non-native invasive plant? Because native plants can be invasive as well, certain species. To that end, and I had to answer this question, I was forced to answer this question on a national panel once. What's the difference between an exotic invasive and a native invasive plant? And a native invasive plant is usually a stage of succession. In other words, it gives way to something else. On Wintergreen's roadsides, one could say that black birch and black locust are native invasives that come in, and Jay Roberts, every so many years, he has to cut back some of the locusts that are there. But black locust is a serial stage of succession. Whenever there's a gap created in a canopy, black locust is in the horse race to fill the gap. But native invasives typically are species that are stages of succession. A non-native invasive, on the other hand, will very often overwhelm and hold back natural succession. Examples are things like Asian silkgrass that take over. They might be kudzu, and any number of other species that come in, take hold, and overwhelm natural succession process that's there. And at Wintergreen, we definitely have problems with invasives, non-native invasives, both with plants and insects, I might add. And it's going to continue as long as we are mobile on the planet. The invasive organisms, in plants included, we've seen an increase over the years as people became more mobile on the planet, but also, the American chestnut came in on a ship. Certainly Asian silkgrass probably came in packing, shipping packing. That's how these things get in. And one of the things that we noticed on Wintergreen Drive, and getting back to the beauty of that, because I'm so enamored with it right now, is that every time we mow in those ditches, and I think Jay mows like 4 feet, a 4-foot V, what we get is crown vetch, which was planted years ago to hold, it was the thing to plant in the early days to prevent erosion. In those little mowed areas, you get crown vetch coming back and Asian silkgrass. But where they're leading the natural plants and mowing after frost, the shade and the native plant species are actually out-competing the non-native species. So again, that's a long-winded answer, and hopefully somewhere in some of that, somehow the question got answered. I hope so.
So we have a couple of questions now. One question was, what are nativars and should they be planted? And then Mary, I see your question, so I'm gonna ask your question next, but I see you.
Liz, I didn't get the question again. Would you say it again?
The first one is, what are nativars and should they be planted?
What are what?
Bruce, I need you. Where did you go, Bruce?
Nativar.
Nativar.
We had a landscape guy that just threw that out. I thought I had heard it before. I thought he was saying instead of a cultivar, a nativar. In other words, a cultivar of a native plant, maybe. I don't know. That's not a typical term.
I've never heard that term before.
Okay, well.
You want me to make up something? A cultivar is typically a species that has been tampered with. For example, you could go to a nursery and get let's say you got a native azalea that was extremely brilliant. And it would mean that someone had gone into the wild and looked for years for the best possible specimen and propagated that, or possibly cross-pollinated 2 species of azaleas. And you see this happen sometimes, and you get, instead of a flame azalea, you get this sort of a peach color. I would call that a nativar or native cultivar. At the same token, there are any number of rose species, any number of other shrub species that native or non-native have been tampered with. So it's been tampered with and selected either by grafting, by cross-pollination, or something else to create something that could be more beautiful in the eye of the beholder. And people sometimes put their names on these and make money doing that.
So officially, a nativar is a cultivar derived from a native plant species.
Are you reading Wikipedia?
I have to give Kathy credit because she totally stumped you on the answer. And that so rarely happens that we get you that I have to call her on screen.
So read that to me again. What is that again?
A nativar are cultivars derived from native plant species? Just saying.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but that's okay.
Welcome to our world.
There's a big surprise.
Maybe it's just a term. That's all.
The next
Just
question.
Google on it. It's there. There's several websites that talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe, aren't you doing that? When we do our native plant sales, you're getting the seeds and you're recreating new plants from the seeds?
No, we're not changing the genetics. What we're getting is absolutely comes true to the seed. We're not now. If there was a natural hybrid in nature that we captured and were able to reproduce that, I would consider that a native R.
Okay, so we're gonna switch gears back to the bear a minute. With the winters, this is a question that we're getting. With the winters staying warmer and bears not really hibernating, should birdseed be put out during any months at all in the winter? That's a really good question.
Yeah, it is a good question.
That just stumped everyone.
You know, I'm gonna make a wild guess here and say you need to monitor your bird feeders when you put them out, no matter when you put them out. And if a bear appears, you're gonna have to take them down. The black bear is not a true hibernator in Virginia. They're not a true hibernator. They sleep for long periods of time, but they're pretty much active most of the winter. So, you know, that you can dispel that piece. But I would say that you need to monitor your feeders and see what's coming to them. You might take them down at night, but monitor your feeders.
I would say that that's one of the most, that and the mountain, the ever-present mountain lion question. But that right there is one of our most asked questions at Trillium House is, when do your bears hibernate? And when you make the statement, our bears are not full hibernators, it's a mind blown moment for a guest or an owner. That's one of our.
But I think that you can say, climate change is a little tougher. It's hard at this moment, I think, to see increased bear activity that you can prove. It may be probable, but it's not provable. There are other things with climate change that are provable, but I don't think it's the bear.
So now to switch back to put on your botany hat. This is really fun. This is like seeing how much knowledge you have in there. I just kind of wish I had like come up with some of my own questions. Should we allow bush clover to continue to grow? And how about wineberries?
The horse has left the barn on wineberry. You will find it in many, many mountain communities. If there's been any kind of agriculture or subsistence farming, wineberry is in there. And I don't know. I don't know what you do with wineberry. What was the other one?
Bush clover.
Bush clover. I'm guessing that bush clover may be another name for Sericea lespedeza, which is extremely invasive and can be somewhat woody.
Bruce is saying yes, it is.
What's that?
Bruce is saying yes, that is it.
Well,
Okay.
I don't know the subspecies, but we think it's lespedeza, and it's
Yeah, and a common name is bush clover. It's Lespedeza sericea, I think, is a species. And that stuff is as invasive as can be if it's in open areas. And I hate to recommend spray, But with that particular species, you may have to use some herbicide if it's a real problem where you are, because it can be very invasive. And I hesitate to say that, but I only say it because most things in the pea family are very, very easy to kill. They don't take much herbicide. Very, 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 very light dose will kill them. You could even take probably something like a little L-shaped, there's a little sickle, a long handle sickle that's L-shaped, wrap it in terry cloth and soak that in an herbicide and just brush it across the plant so you don't kill anything else. I think that probably would be one possible solution, but I know that species. We used to have it in the ag places, in the hay fields, and cattle won't even eat it once it gets stemmy, once it gets real mature. It has a kind of a semi-woody stem. But yeah, it's a problem, and that's the only thing I can think of to tell you to deal with it.
Doug, are there other species of Lespedeza that aren't that bad?
Absolutely. There are a number of species that are non-woody that show up, and I think there are about a dozen species of it actually. But that one, I know that one, and it gets 2 to 3 feet tall and is very woody.
Yeah, I think I described it as bush clover. I got iNaturalist, and it said it was one of the Lespedezas, but it's a ground spreading thing.
Well, now some of those are not woody.
Right, this one's not woody.
But they are very easy. They are very, very sensitive to any kind of very light doses of herbicide. And they're easy to pull up. The semi-woody one, you can't pull it up. You mow it and it comes back. Anyway, there's some species of Lespedeza that are native. Not. Probably half the species are not.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a new person, so I'm going to interrupt a minute and just give her a heads up before I bring her on camera. We changed up the so welcome first, Miss Susan, and we changed up the format a little bit on tonight's event to allow people to come on screen and say hello to each other. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit the button that will say promote you to panelist and bring you on screen. If you do not want your picture on screen, just don't enable your video or stop video, and that will allow you. But I wanted to kind of take a minute and give her a heads up before I did that to her. So welcome, Susan. We're asking some different questions, and also at the same time kind of playing an informal game of Stump the Director. So, which is a lot.
And you're doing that very successfully, I might.
Fun as all get out for staff. So one question we had is, can I hang a bird feeder on a wire out of a bear's reach during shoulder season?
No.
Yeah.
I've never seen it done successfully.
Janice, I'm thinking, so I'm totally going to call Bruce out because Bruce and Jan are in different rooms, and so he cannot actually right now see her dying laughing, but she is. She is laughing, and I'm just saying
I've never seen it done successfully.
With you. So one question we had that was written in is, how is climate change affecting the wintergreen environment? That was kind of to go back to that question that we started on with climate change. How is climate change affecting the wintergreen environment?
Well, I didn't prepare for that question, and that's a hard question, but I'm going to take a shot at it and talk a little bit about what's probable and what's provable again. We have a fantastic science advisory committee, and I wish they could all be here, and you'd probably be getting better answers than I'm giving you on specific things. But One of these individuals is a meteorologist, and he came and gave a lecture a year or so ago. Terry, I think you were probably there to hear Jeff Halverson, and maybe others were as well. But Jeff went into a lot of things about climate change and what's probable and what's provable. We do have a research project going on here right now on climate change. But before I say that, what I see that seems provable is the weather patterns associated, the extreme weather patterns that we're seeing. In 2019, we got over 100 inches of rain here, where we typically, the average, I think, is 40. We got over 100, and this was recorded in multiple weather stations. And Josh and I joked about that and said, you know, we're getting in the border region of temperate rainforest. And according to meteorologist Jeff Halverson, who could answer this much better than I could, I remember that in his presentation, what he said is, and this I think was in response to a question, when the temperature between the equator and the poles, let's say North Pole in this case, when that temperature differential gets less, in other words, the numbers get closer together, it affects the current of the jet stream. Now, the jet stream is like a river that flows across this country. In the wintertime, it dips down. In the summertime, it rises. And apparently, when the temperature between the equator and the pole equalizes somewhat, the current of the jet stream, the speed of that jet stream, the current becomes less, and it starts to get, and this was his meteorological word. He said loopy. We know it as loop, and he called it loopy. Now, this is a guy that's been a hurricane hunter. He's on the weather gang. He's associate dean of the meteorological school at University of Maryland. Jeff is maybe 50 years old, and he's done a lot of work and has written. He's got a textbook on meteorology that's in press. And I think that for example, recently we got something like a 60 degree drop in temperature in Denver in 48 hours. This was record breaking. We had 3.5 inches of snow in Denver, 1st of September, I think. And then, of course, we've had record rain in a lot of different places. So I think that these are the kinds of things that are pretty much provable associated with climate change. I cannot tell you that I have seen southern plant species migrating north, which, you know, would be a long-term effect. For example, let's say over on Crawford's Knob, we have the southern range limit of tall cinquefoil, which is a southern range limit in North America. We have the southern range limit of speckled alder pretty much in the nature preserve, maybe a little bit farther south than that. Ultimately, those species are going to be outcompeted by more southern species as climate change happens. And what will happen is that, I mean, they're rare now, but what will happen is that the mean annual temperature associated with their ability to sexually reproduce will be limited. Another example is there is a fern in Florida called shoestring fern. And ferns are great examples because fern spores get in the jet stream, they go all over the world. There's no doubt that we have tropical fern spores in the woods at Wintergreen. But mean annual temperature does not allow them to reproduce. So in Virginia, down around Mountain Lake and Blacksburg, we have something called the Southern Appalachian gametophyte. And it is the first stage in reproduction of the shoestring fern, which is in Florida, but it never gets beyond the gametophyte, which is the sperm and egg generation. With ferns, you have to have alternation of generation. So sexual reproduction occurs when you have this tiny little miniature leaf-like thing where you have sperm and egg. It's like the bloom, and the fern grows up from that. Well, a lot of these species can't reproduce. So the point of that long-winded discussion is that at some point we should start seeing plants, southern species move farther north, and northern species retreat. I can't say that we're seeing that yet. I sat down 2 years ago with the Atlas of Virginia flora of all the plants in the state, and then I was able to go back and look at stuff that was done in the 60s, the distributions of the plants in the 60s. And I couldn't quite make the case because more people are looking for things. I can't say if, okay, these were hidden and someone found them. So it's not clear, but the weather patterns themselves are. I think it's clear that anomaly, that rainfall anomaly, is associated. And some of the amounts of rains associated with these hurricanes, probably. Halverson said that it was hard to prove that we're getting more hurricanes now. He said it's probable, but it's hard to prove. So what are we doing about climate change at Wintergreen? What's happening here? Well, there's a professor at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, and I believe the recommendation of her came from Scott Miller, who's on our Science Advisory Committee. We have accepted a research project, a long-term research project. She's young and full of vim and vigor and ready to go. And she and Josh have staked out, I want to say 6 or 8 plots between the bottom of the mountain at Rhodes Farm and Crawford's Knob. And all these plots have been put in places where we have some degree of certainty that they can't be touched. They are pieces of property that we control, the Nature Foundation controls, like Allen Creek Preserve, like the face of Crawford's Knob, where we own all the timber and the trees and the shrubs, and of course, the preserve area, the naturally preserved top of Crawford's Knob. She's going to be looking at lepidopterans, which are butterflies and moths. She's going to be identifying every plant periodically in those sites. And quite frankly, I don't know where all of the expertise and manpower is going to come from some of this, but she has an NSF grant to do this. And she is expecting to show change over time with insect species and diversity and plants in these plots. I don't know any more than that. If she were here online, she could tell you exactly what her parameters are. I don't know, but we are doing that.
So we're gonna completely switch you up again.
Okay.
And
you're gonna probably switch me off because I'm talking too much.
What kind of plants should we plant in our new water feature?
In our new water what feature?
Feature.
Water feature. I assume this is what kind of native plants?
And can we get a water feature at Trillium House?
That wasn't part of the question, Liz.
That would be really cool.
You're taking liberty here. We just go across the golf course to the pond there.
I know, but I want a little water feature right outside my office.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
For the bears to just lay in probably, but.
I could give you a list of things that they could plant. So this may be a question that I should handle with the person who asked it and give them specific information, because I can bore everybody that I see here to tears and they would go screaming to the exits if I tried to tell them all the species that they could plant. But it's certainly doable. And there are certainly examples in wetlands all around the county. If you take a look at some of the things If anybody is interested in the ecosystem and plants portion of this that I did, they will encounter a number of species, because I did I think I did 2 or 3 different wetlands, and I talked about the species that occur naturally there. And so I'd recommend they look at that, and if they want to know a specific list, then they can call me or email me.
We can do that. All right, so we'll kind of start thinking about kind of wrapping it up as, unless everybody just wants to hang out with us for the whole evening. I'm guessing that people may be.
You know, Liz, I just can't tell Don how happy I am to see him, and for him to be able to hear all of this, because I mean, he's working on a video right now for me on pieces about Wintergreen, and there was a question in there about the future of Wintergreen. Was there?
Yes, somebody wrote in and said, "What is your vision for the future of the Nature Foundation?"
Well, I wanted to be sure that question was asked when I'm looking at Don Faulkner, because I came to Wintergreen initially because I believed in Don Faulkner's dream. That's what drew me to Wintergreen. And in whatever small part difference I made along the way to keep that dream alive, that's a core value to me. And Wintergreen is incredibly unique, and maybe this is an appropriate last question. It's incredibly unique. As George Nicholas said, my God, there could never be another Wintergreen. Nobody would live long enough to get all the permits. Anyway, but that original uniqueness is and quality of vision before the Clean Water Act, before we were required to do so, is so important, because Wintergreen would have been like a lot of other resorts. And I think that where I am, you know, all of us are getting a little bit long in the tooth. And I pride myself on not getting old, and I know Don does as well. But we have to somehow envision what it's going to take to keep the nature of Wintergreen and the original dream intact. And I don't think this necessarily needs to be a plug for the endowment campaign, but it's tied in with it. Over the next several years, we need to endow this organization, which is clearly recognized as a leader in what we do. Dennis Wiggum will say, I know of no other community in the country that has a science-based organization sitting at its heart. We have to somehow make sure that vision is protected, and that intent stays at the forefront of everything here. I mean, Jay Roberts and I had talked about, and he's young, he's going to be here a long time yet, I hope. And he recognizes the science that this organization brings to the table. And we have to be sure that we keep good science in front of resort managers, of board members. I think everybody gets, especially right now, the timing is so important with everything. I mean, think about how hard it would be to get our national parks if we had to do it today. But timing right now is really interesting, and there's a window, because, you know, when else have we had 300 people at one time on our hiking trails? When else have we thought about, you know, what it means to deal with this pandemic by separating ourselves and immersing ourselves in nature? So we need to take advantage of the moment, of the timing that we have today, and realize that people are coming to nature. They're coming, maybe coming back, maybe coming in because they ignored it, and they're realizing, oh, now I understand how important it is. It's so important to capture this, to capture the moment, but it's also important to use the opportunity to envision a future of this place that continues to set it apart. So we can say, okay, guys, this started 50 years ago. My God, 50 years ago this started. Don Faulkner had a dream 50 years ago for this. And it was being led by his conscience. It was being led by the conscience of people who were trying to build something here. And I know I'm preaching, but we need to make sure that kind of future is protected, and the thread of the Nature Foundation that is woven through all of this is the thing that's going to do it. Don, I'd like you to comment on that. And you don't have any longer than I spent.
Doug, I can't really add to that except to say I think you're right on the money. And I think that what Wintergreen can be, has been, and I pray will be, is an example for all of us that come to Wintergreen to care more for the earth, to care more for creation, as well as Wintergreen. I think Wintergreen can be the example to inspire us as to what we can do and do for Wintergreen. And with that, what we can do for the earth, which is, we know, our mother, and which, as we know, is more troubled for many, many reasons and in many, many ways than we could have ever imagined. We live in the most troubled, damaging, dangerous times for Earth and all life on it, I think. And I think many more better informed than me know in recorded history. So, as usual, in my long-winded way, I answered your question, I hope. Thank you, Doug.
No, you did. And I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
So good to see you.
Well, all of you all are looking mighty good to me. And I'm sorry that my bashful wife's over here. I'd like her to put her face in so you can see her because she's really.
We saw her.
Thank you.
Hey, Miss Mary.
Liz, I can't think of anything better than giving Don Faulkner the last word in this.
We will do. Well, the one thing that we promised everybody we would do at the end of this is do the raffle. So after Don has spoken, it doesn't seem all that, it seems pretty small, but we promised, and so therefore we will do. Anybody who registered for the event, we entered into a raffle to win one of 3 items. The first one being a set of tickets to the 2021 Spring Wildflower Symposium. So I have a special guest who is very excited to draw that name, and we'll draw for the symposium tickets first, and then we also have a For Love of the Land book that we will get out to the winner. And then we also have a t-shirt, which is a really cool, and I have an example of it. So I hope you can see it really well. It's the rhododendron, and it was designed by an artist known as M, and donated the artwork was donated to us, and on the back is our logo. So I apologize about the very amateur way I'm showing it to you, but that that will be very fun. And of course, you choose your size and so forth, and I'll follow up with the winners. But without further ado, I will bring on my assistant on screen. You want to come on screen?
Hi, Harper.
If she looks a little like me, that's because, you know, the apple does not fall far from the tree. All right, so you have to close your eyes.
Come in, Harper, so we can see you.
You have to do it. You have to do it just like we practiced. You have to close your eyes and move it all around, and then draw. So the first drawing is for 2 tickets to the symposium. Okay, close your eyes. Close your eyes. She's only 6. There shall be no cheating here. Ah, Bill Ho, that's awesome. Bill Ho won the 2 tickets, so I will follow up with him after the symposium. I mean, after this weekend. So I will follow up. All right.
How cool is that?
That is way cool. All right, you want to do the second one? Okay. All right. Okay, and this is for the book, for a copy of the book. Oh, Brenda Kessler, how cool. Welcome. We will follow up, Miss Brenda. Awesome. That's very cool. I'm lining them up. And so
Bear outside my house. I can see a bear right now. I can tell you.
see, Bruce, this is why you can't have your feet hurt. Look on, do you see on out of his window? Mm-hmm. How fun is that? You got to see a bear right through our front door. Okay, well, hold on.
Sorry to interrupt. It was exciting though.
Yeah, that's very cool, and it gives further validation to why Bruce cannot have a theater hanging
Really?
over season. Okay, so Miss Karen Sheffield gets the T-shirt. So again, I will follow up with her. I'm showing you names that I'm realizing you can't see, so I apologize.
Did you say Karen?
Karen, yeah.
Kitten Karen?
Mhm.
How cool is that?
I know, how cool is that? So I will follow up there. But thank you. If you're watching this later, again, thank you. We have had a great time. This has been kind of an experiment for us, a leap of faith, and a lot of work. And Kathy really, you know, I was thanked in the beginning of this, and I don't get the credit on this one, and I want that on record. Kathy has done an amazing job on this. In most of the videos that you're going to see this weekend were shot.
And we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg here. There are 50 couple people and who have looked at this. And Dawn, Mary Buford Hitz was one of them, the author of the book. She signed up. So, and I can't remember the other names, but it's been really cool to see the response. At least we know we can do this.
Yes, we know, and the markers, who we all know are here for the weekend. They're registered out in Colorado. The Knowles, who used to be with us, who are now in North Carolina. So it's also been fun to see some of the names of people. And then we also have a lot of new owners who joined us this year, which is also very, very fun. So thank you. Watch for the next 30 days. They're open. Don't hesitate if you watch something as these next couple of days go by and you have questions. Email Kathy or I. If we don't have the answer, we will.
Or me.
Yes. Or you can email straight to Doug, because that's who we'll go to anyway. So thank you guys. You have a great night.
Thank you, Harper.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Harper.
This was fun.
Sorry, Bruce, you don't get your bird feeder during shoulder season.
He just said.
Nice
never
try.
seen it.
He knew. It was like he knew you were asking.
He didn't say it couldn't be done. He just said he'd never seen it.
And I love the fact that he went to her window instead of yours. Thank you, Terry.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
John.
Bye,
Isn't
guys.
Harper's birthday
Yeah.
coming up soon?
Yes, yes, it is.
Happy birthday, Harper.
Her world has been made.
I
She's
remember.
early next week.
No, I did
So-
not say what was next week.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Great seeing
Father.
everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
I think that may have been Sarah Bell who joined us, which is really cool. Norm and Sarah, they are old Shaner friends. So I'm not sure if that's who that was, but I think it may have been. So
Okay.
What day, Harper?
October the 10th.
And I'm October 16th.
We got a bunch of Libras
And
here.
our granddaughter is October 9th.
Yay.
mind has been blown. What do you think about that?
It's been fun. Thank you.
Thank
All
you
right.
guys so
I'm
much.
signing off.